Germany has been ramping up its expenditure on the military. Billions are being spent to modernize the armed forces, and defense companies are getting ready to take advantage of an unprecedented spending spree. One of Germany's biggest weapons makers, Rheinmetall, has announced plans to start military production at a plant here in Berlin, but not without opposition from those who warn against what they see as creeping militarization.
It's a sunny afternoon in Berlin, but these protesters are spending their free time speaking up for peace. They believe the decision to convert this auto parts factory to producing casings for artillery shells will promote military aggression and cost lives.
We are demonstrating against Rheinmetall, against the weaponry factory, and also against the whole militarization of the German government that's taking place at the moment.
Rheinmetall, founded in 1889, is one of Germany's oldest arms manufacturing firms. Its history includes supplying weapons to Hitler's war machine, a legacy that still shapes public attitudes towards the defense industry. Today, Rheinmetall seeks to be at the leading edge of armaments technology. Its tanks and other systems are in use in Ukraine, and demand across NATO is surging.
Rheinmetall is a company obviously now going into defense innovation, but what we're learning about war is you still need armor, and you need lots of it, and you need to replace it if it's damaged or destroyed. Rheinmetall had previously made relatively small amounts in batches necessary for nations. Now they're realizing they have to ramp up production and be able to sustain large amounts of production for what we see now as an era of longer wars.
Some have suggested locating a weapons plant in the capital could make Berlin a target in the event of conflict. Many demonstrators are also unhappy because they say Germany is supplying Rheinmetall's weapons to Israel. But switching the factory from making auto parts to weapons parts could bring economic benefits. Asked for a comment by DW, Rheinmetall said,
"The decision to proceed with the renovation is based primarily on the goal of making efficient use of existing state-of-the-art industrial infrastructure and securing skilled jobs in the area for the long term."
Germany needs manufacturing jobs. These are good jobs. They're relatively well paying, and the NATO alliance needs more artillery. They need manufacture.
Reactions from local residents reflect the mix of opinion on Germany's increased defense spending.
Germany is not waging war against anyone. Germany must produce these weapons for its own protection. That's its right.
I stand with everyone who is in favor of peace. One should not kill anyone, nor should one produce weapons for that purpose, because that's the only reason they exist.
Protests like this reflect a desire to keep Germany out of wars and curb the influence of powerful weapons makers. What they don't do is answer the question, how can Germany keep its hands clean and at the same time step up to defend Europe?
And let's get more. We are joined by DW's chief political correspondent, Nina Haase. So, Nina, Germany is experiencing its most dramatic military expansion since the Cold War. What stands out most about the changes underway?
Well, Sarah, we're seeing a fundamental shift in how Germany sees its security responsibilities. So after decades of underinvestment, Germany is pouring money into that sector, trying to rebuild infrastructure, trying to regain capabilities that it lost or gave up, really. And now what is striking is, of course, that this is no longer just theory. It's actually happening in people's backyard. So people are beginning to notice that shift.
A lot of controversy, as we saw in that report. One of Germany's oldest and largest arms manufacturers, Rheinmetall, ramping up production, including here in Berlin. How widespread is the opposition, Nina?
Well, those protests have been vocal for a very long time, and Germany has a very strong pacifist movement. So in this district here in Berlin, the peace activists joined forces with pro-Palestinian groups to protest against weapons production in the capital, you know, essentially coming from different sides, but all for the same goal. However, I would like to add that also when we have conversations with people in Berlin, you also have feeling that more and more people are rethinking what pacifism actually is and what patriotism means. And lots of people who used to call themselves peaceniks are now also saying, okay, I do want to be capable of defending my way of life. How can I actually join up? It's just that these people are not that vocal out in the streets.
And, you know, when we look broadly at society, would you say, have Germany's politicians, to your point, been able to bring the public along with rearmament initiatives? I mean, where does broad public support stand?
In recent studies, you always see an overwhelming support, and that is actually quite surprising for Germany's efforts to, rearm, to rebuild those capabilities. And given Germany's history, this is not a given. So the government has actually managed to take people along on the road largely. But of course, now the big question is beginning to be asked: where does that money come from? Because this is, let's not forget, money that is being borrowed from future generations, and it is money that cannot be spent in other areas. And the German government is currently undergoing a very difficult period where they're cutting in almost all the other sectors. So this is, of course, now causing debates where people are beginning to compare how much money is actually going into defense infrastructure, how much money is going to be poured into kindergartens. People are going to be less rich because the economy is struggling, but all the money is being given to those arms producers. That is the feeling that many people here are beginning to collect. So the debates are happening because it's becoming visible.
That's the feeling among people. But then you have some of the country's leading economists coming out and highlighting the economic opportunities that rearmament might provide for Germany's sluggish economy through investment and job creation. How strong is that case, Nina?
There is a very strong case, Sarah, and we heard the expert in the report as well saying Germany needs skilled jobs, not just low-paying jobs, skilled manufacturing jobs. And it's almost an irony that a lot of car makers are currently struggling with VW, one of the biggest brands in this country, having announced that it might cut up to 100,000 jobs globally. So all these factories are sort of grinding to a halt, more or less. And now people are saying, okay, why not use these facilities? Why not produce the artillery and the ammunition that NATO says it wants Germany to produce, and also use these factories where people have been trained really well? There's another big, strong economic factor as well, because all the research, the development that goes into defense ultimately ends up being used for civilian purposes. Lots and lots of innovative products have come out of R&D that initially was intended for defense purposes. But of course, there's a big trade-off as well, because, where does the money come from? You need to fund these systems. You need to help these companies actually scale up production. You need to take away premises and dedicate them to arms manufacturers that were originally planned by a local mayor, say, for leisure purposes. So these are very uncomfortable decisions, and this is a debate that is only beginning now.
DW Chief Political Correspondent Nina Haase. Thanks, Nina.